Welcome to Very Rich Stories, where you'll see original and often true stories of betrayal, secrets, and twists on real life. And now, Until the Morning, the story of Robin and Ray. Robin is 34, small and sweet, with big worried eyes and a pixie haircut that always looks like it's just been tousled by the wind. She used to laugh more. Before Ray came back, petite, quietly beautiful, worn down but not broken. She still dresses with care, even if life has beaten that care out of her rhythm. Ray used to be a different man. They married young, maybe too young. This was back when Ray was disciplined, respectful, the kind of guy who stood when a woman entered the room. But the man who returned from deployment isn't the one she married. This Ray drinks too much, snaps too quickly, and treats Robin more like a burden than a partner. He belittles her, quietly, cruelly, often, daily. And she flinches at the smallest shift in his tone, and he likes it that way, as if he is a drill sergeant. But it is Robin who has been holding the house together, and the marriage, well, as long as she does what Ray says, because he is threatening her all the time. To cut her off financially, to put her out of the house, to divorce her. Anything he can threaten her with to control her, he's tried it all. They don't have kids, although they've been married many years. Ray drinks, and his marital performance has taken the hit, but he would never admit it. Robin has resigned herself to no kids anyway. In this marriage, in this house, she'd justify herself of being robbed of motherhood. No one says anything to Ray about his treatment of Robin. No one wants to rile him up. They justify it with, after all he's been through, he's seen the front lines. They only said, "Thank you for your service to Ray." Even close friends and family, even those who stay over from time to time, pretend they don't hear Ray's words to tiny, quiet Robin. The walls are thin in this small, old house, but sympathy doesn't seem to reach through drywall. Robin still believes the man she married is somewhere inside Ray. But each night he comes home later, each time he raises a bottle of beer or a glass of whiskey, each time he raises his voice, that belief cracks a little more. But soon, something would have to give in this marriage. They lived in a small bungalow home that often needed repairs. There was one spot in the living room floor that had been soft for months. At first, it made a squeak when you walked over it. Even 100-pound Robin could feel it give, and at first squeak, but later it moaned. Every time she mentioned it to Ray, he told her she was nagging, and he was blankety-blank, tired of her whiny, complaining, nagging voice. Robin was not a nagger. But this was Ray's way of shutting her up and shutting her down. But that night, when something shifted, Ray had gone out, came back drunk, and walked over that soft spot himself. Not remembering that Robin had ever said a thing about it, he decided he would fix that. He's Ray, he could fix that. There is nothing he couldn't fix, he told himself. So he was going to fix it for himself, not for Robin, but for Ray. Because I'm the king of this house, he declared loudly. He was going to fix it that night because it annoyed him when he walked over it. Ray's 160 pounds made that soft spot in the living room floor groan. "Oh, house, you don't talk back to me. I own you. I'll show you," he yelled at the floor just like a drunk person might. It was close to midnight, and except for Ray's declarations to the house, the night hummed with silence, that uneasy, pressurized kind that builds when words go unsaid for too long. Ray got tools and began working on a loose floorboard of their small bungalow that always needed repairs that he never got to anyway, but tonight he decided to fix it. Ray was crouched over a loose floorboard in the living room, the single bulb from the ceiling fan casting a yellow cone of light onto his back. He reeked of cheap whiskey and sweat, mumbling curses under his breath as he jabbed a screwdriver under the warped wood. His hands weren't steady anymore from the years of drink. When Robin heard the noise of Ray working on the floor, she came from the kitchen where she had just finished washing dishes. She just stood there and said, "He said he'd fix that." But then she thought to herself, Ray said a lot of things. Robin stood in the kitchen doorway, arms wrapped tight around herself, watching like she always did, from a distance, unsure if approaching him would draw a snarl or silence. She was glad he was going to finally fix it, but drunk. Then she thought to herself, when was he not drunk? In spite of Ray, Robin had always tried to hold it together, especially in front of people they knew, friends and family. But the floor, The floor finally gave way to the weight of Ray, collapsing under the weight of everything he's neglected, both in the marriage, in the house, and in his life. Then came the crack, sharp, violent, like a branch breaking under too much weight. The floor gave way, and Ray fell from the ground floor of their house into their basement, onto the cement floor. Robin barely had time to gasp before the floor gave out beneath him. 1 second Ray was there, swearing at the stubborn plank, and the next, he was yelling loudly, and then he was gone from sight. There was a thud, deep and final, cement on bone. Robin didn't move at first. She stood there frozen, staring at the ragged, jagged hole where her husband had just vanished. She felt her heartbeat in her ears, in her fingertips. Then, quiet. No more swearing, no groaning, no demand for help. Just quiet. Robin runs to the basement. Ray is breathing. His eyes are closed and his breathing is labored, but he has survived. He is severely injured. Robin calls for an ambulance and Ray is rushed to the closest ER. The nurses there are trying to attend to him, but then they realize he is drunk as a skunk. He also disrespects women to the max and doesn't want the nurses to attend to him. Ray wants to wait for the trauma doctor. ER 1:24 a.m. The automatic doors burst open as the paramedics wheeled Ray in. His face was pale, streaked with sweat and speckled with concrete dust. One leg was twisted at an angle that wasn't natural. He was conscious, barely. Robin followed behind, hunched into herself like she was trying to disappear. Her hands were still stained with gray dirt from the floorboards. Blunt force trauma from a fall, one of the EMTs barked. Basement drop. Probable femur fracture, possible spinal involvement. Vitals are holding, BP unstable, though. A nurse, mid-30s, professional and no nonsense, came to assess him. "Sir, we need to get your vitals and start an IV." "Don't touch me," Ray slurred, blinking hard. "Where's the doctor? I said I want the damn doctor, not some nursemaid." The nurse didn't flinch. She'd seen worse. "Sir, you fell through a floor. We need to stabilize you." "Stabilize yourself. I don't want no women touching me," Ray spat. "Where's the man in charge?" The nurse gave a tight, clinical smile. "That would be me until the trauma surgeon gets down here. But by all means, go ahead and keep bleeding internally if that makes you feel more in control." Robin stood back, shrinking into the corner near the double doors, eyes wide and unblinking. She hadn't said a word since she called 911. Now, as the staff surrounded Ray, some calm, some clearly losing patience, she realized something unsettling. These people didn't look at Ray the way she did. They looked at him like a patient, a problem, a drunk, not like a monster, not like someone to fear. It was the first time in years Robin had seen anyone talk back to him without flinching. They weren't afraid of him. Robin sat up and took notice of this. They were not afraid of Ray. He is cussing and swearing and is awful. A female ER doc comes in. He doesn't want her either. Ray is upsetting the whole ER, so they roll him into a corner to let him wait for the male trauma surgeon, since that is what he wanted to do, and also to sober up. ER holding bay, 2:07 a.m. Ray was screaming. Not from pain, though there was plenty of that. Screaming because women were touching him, telling him what to do. Because no one was giving him what he wanted, a man in charge. A man like him. "Get your damn hands off me," he roared, thrashing on the gurney. "I don't take orders from skirts. Where the hell is the doctor?" A nurse leaned in with a needle. "Sir, this is morphine. It'll help with the—" Ray batted her hand away. "You try and stick me with that, and I'll file a lawsuit so fast your head'll spin, you dumb witch!" Gasps were heard down the hallway. A younger nurse flinched. An older one muttered under her breath, "Charming." Robin stood off to the side again, arms tight across her chest, trying to fold into the sterile white wall. Her heart thudded hard in her chest. No one here was defending him, and no one was defending her either, because no one had to. It was obvious now. They all saw it. They heard it. Robin now gets a taste of what it looks like when others finally see the version of Ray she's lived with in private. Then the lead ER doctor walked in. Dr. Sharp, Dr. Natalie Sharp. A woman. Mid-40s, tough, smart, and done taking crap from anyone. Especially half-lucid misogynists with a shattered femur and liquor for blood. She strode to Ray's side and snapped on a pair of gloves. "Mr. Kane, I'm Dr. Sharp. I'm the trauma lead tonight. You're bleeding internally and possibly concussed. We need imaging, and I need to examine you right now." Ray glared at her with bloodshot eyes. "I told them, no women. I ain't letting some lady doctor cut me open. You think I want a broad playing with my spine? What kind of sissy hospital is this anyway? I want to go to a real hospital where men run things." Dr. Sharp didn't blink. She just turned to the nurse beside her and said evenly, "Roll him into Bay 4. Let him wait." "You're really gonna just yes?" She looked down at him. "He wants a male trauma surgeon? He can wait for one. Maybe by the time Dr. Harris gets here at 7 a.m., the patient will have sobered up. In the meantime, we'll monitor his vitals. But no one gets abused in my ER." They wheeled Ray, still ranting, into a curtained-off corner of the ER alone. The nurses pulled the curtain half closed, enough to block him from sight, but not enough to muffle his angry mumbling. Robin stood frozen by the nurse's station. Dr. Sharp glanced at her on the way out. A moment of eye contact, not pity, not judgment, just awareness. Like, "I see what you're dealing with." Then Dr. Sharp said, "I don't mean to wax philosophical, but these physical injuries may very well echo his emotional and mental disorganization." Robin understood most of what the doctor said, but then she looked away, knowing it was all true. ER waiting room, 2:35 a.m. The ER waiting room was cold and fluorescent. Chairs too stiff. Vending machines hummed like grounded drones. A TV mounted high in the corner played a muted talk show, laughter without sound. Robin's life, the soundtrack Ray provided, did not match the life she wanted to live. Robin sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her purse by her feet, back straight like she was still being watched. She wasn't. No one noticed her. No one had asked her any questions. She wasn't the patient. She was just the woman who called 911, the wife. She's the one who is trying to save his life by getting him to the nearest hospital. The VA hospital where Ray believed that men ran things was nearly 2 hours away. She stared ahead, eyes unfocused, as Ray's muffled curses floated down the hallway from behind a half-drawn curtain. Her fingers were still smudged with basement dirt. She looked at them like they belonged to someone else. She thought about the moment she found him, crumpled, unconscious, surrounded by splinters and concrete dust. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't panicked. She had just called. No hesitation, no terror, automatic, no racing heartbeat. It was a matter of course. She automatically called 911. What did that mean? She wondered to herself right now. Her mother used to say, when you love someone, your body tells you when they're in danger. You just know. But Robin's body had felt still, unmoved. Not because she didn't care, but because maybe a part of her had already let go. She closed her eyes and tried to picture Ray being kind, being thankful, looking at her like she mattered, saying thank you, saying sorry. She couldn't imagine it, not clearly. Could a man like Ray be changed by something like this? Could a broken leg and a near miss with death unseat a personality built on control and resentment? Or would he come home angrier than ever, trapped in his own body, drunk with bitterness, swinging that pain outward the way he always had, and she'd be right back where she was before, in that house, with those thin walls that Ray had punched more than one hole through with his fist, and those soft floors mirroring a marriage foundation that wasn't strong enough for anything really, and that hole would still be in that broken floor. Robin swallowed hard. All the while, Robin is seated in the waiting area with mixed emotions. This man has been so abusive to her for so many years. And now he's behaving like this. She wondered why she didn't hesitate when she found him on the basement floor. In good conscience, she couldn't have done that. She was raised to be a good Methodist. But in reality, she had had enough of Ray. Maybe, though, maybe. She whispered a prayer. Once he recovers from this, will he become another man, one who is kind and patient and appreciative to even be alive? And he will see that I stood by him through the whole ordeal. Or will he be the same ogre that he is now? Robin buried her head into her hands, worried, more about the future than about Ray's current state. Even though he was hurt, had gotten hurt tonight, he was in the hospital, where he could get help for his injuries. But her real worry was about when she brought him home. Could he be worse? Could he get any worse? And who would be there to see through Ray and actually help her? Robin begins to wake up, seeing the truth of Ray and their relationship, not with a dramatic decision or loud confrontation, but through quiet reflection. The waiting room was her own emotional crucible. The stillness around her contrasts with the chaos Ray brings 24/7. She thought for just a moment that she could just walk out of there and leave him forever, and he'd never find her again. This could be her moment to get away from her captor, Ray, the man who should have been her husband, not her jailer. For the first time in a long time, she's the one in control of time. Not him. She had time, just a little. A window. Ray would be in that bed for a while. Sedated, incapacitated, the house would be quiet, and she could think, she could decide. Robin comes out of her thinking, realizing they are still at the hospital. She asks for permission to see him. She wants to talk him into being reasonable and let the ER lady doc examine and treat him. At least let the nurses do his x-rays and the scan to make sure he doesn't have a head injury. A nurse with kind eyes brought Robin to the curtained area. "He's stable for now," she said softly, still refusing treatment, "but maybe you can get through." Her legs trembled with every step as she approached the curtain. She pulled it back gently. ER holding bay, 3 a.m. The room smelled like antiseptic and plastic tubing. Machines beeped softly, steady, impersonal. A curtain shifted slightly in the draft from the hallway. Robin stood just inside the room, gripping the strap of her purse with both hands like a stress reliever, fidget spinner, or other security device. Her voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. "Ray, please, just let them do the scans." Ray lay on his side, his back to her. The hospital gown hung awkwardly around him, exposing the bruises blooming along his shoulder. His leg braced awkwardly. His hospital gown was twisted, and dried blood flaked from his arm. He looked smaller somehow, not weaker, but reduced, condensed into the raw, hostile core of what he had become. He scowled the moment he saw her. "What are you doing back here?" Robin stepped in cautiously. I just want to talk. I don't need a babysitter." "No, but you need help," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "They need to do scans, Ray. You might have a head injury, internal bleeding. That doctor." "That woman," he snapped. "I told them. I want a real doctor, not some power-hungry bimbo trying to tell me what's wrong with me." Robin flinched but didn't back away. "Please, Ray, just let the nurses take your x-rays. Let someone look at your spine. If it's bad, and you wait." He shifted with a grunt, not from acknowledgement, from discomfort, maybe pride. "They can't treat what they can't see," she tried again, quieter this time. Ray exhaled a hard breath. "I said I don't want them poking around in me. You might have a head injury, internal bleeding. You could." She stopped herself. The word die sat unspoken in her throat. Ray muttered, "They can wait. I'm not going to be some test dummy for a bunch of women who think they know better than me." Robin took a tentative step forward. "Ray, they're trying to help you." "Shut up." His voice cracked through the air like a whip. "You don't get to tell me what to do. None of them do. And you, especially you can keep your fake concern. You just want me patched up so I can keep paying the damn mortgage." Robin's face went slack. "Ray, you know I work a full-time job." Ray was an expert at deflection. She knew she had to get back to the issues at hand. She hadn't come in with an agenda. She hadn't come in with demands. Just worry, a sliver of hope. But now, all she felt was the heat behind her eyes, the tightness in her chest. "I just wanted to help," she whispered. "Well, don't," he growled, turning his head away from her like the sight of her offended him. Leave me," he insisted. He turned his head slightly, not enough to see her, just enough to make it clear she was no longer welcome in the room. "You want to help?" he snapped. "Then leave. Go sit in your corner like you always do." He repeated. Robin's breath caught. She stared at his back, that same hard, unyielding wall she'd run into for years. It wasn't the pain talking, it was Ray. The real one, the sober one, the one who still didn't want her voice, only her obedience. She stepped back, slowly. Her hands trembled now, but she didn't speak again. Robin turned without another word and let the curtain fall behind her. The curtain whispered shut. Ray refuses to be reasoned with and sends Robin back out to the waiting area, in tears. That did it. The tears came fast, but quiet. No sobbing, no dramatic collapse, just a slow, steady flow of grief running down her cheeks. She walked back down the hall, past the nurses who pretended not to watch, past the vending machines and the stale coffee station, back into the cold stillness of the waiting room, and sat down alone. Only this time, she didn't fold her hands. This time, she stared at the exit. She really stared at it and imagined herself walking out of that hospital. But duty made her stay there. Hospital waiting room, 3:43 a.m. The chairs were all lined up in stiff, unnatural rows, like soldiers waiting for orders. The walls hummed faintly with fluorescent lighting, and the coffee in Robin's hand had long gone cold. She didn't notice. She sat alone, not slumped, but still, upright. As if relaxing might let something break loose inside her. Her hands, though small and delicate, were clenched too tightly around the paper cup. It made the rim soggy. Her blonde pixie cut was slightly disheveled, tucked behind one ear like she'd done it without thinking. There was dirt under her nails from the floor of the house. She hadn't changed clothes, jeans, cardigan, white blouse faintly wrinkled, and her shoes, simple flats, were wet from the damp grass outside. She looked young and old at the same time. Her soft blue-gray eyes stayed fixed on the floor. Not because it was interesting, but making eye contact with another human felt like too much right now. Her expression wasn't blank, but suspended. Worry sat there quietly, like a child curled up on her lap. People passed her, nurses, doctors, security guards, other visitors, and none of them paused. She didn't register as in need. Just another wife. Just another long night. She took a sip of the cold coffee and didn't flinch. Her mind kept spinning. What if he's paralyzed? What if he dies? What if he lives and nothing changes? That last question hurt the most. There was a flicker of something else beneath the worry. Not hope. Not yet, but the faintest guilty shimmer of possibility. ER waiting room, 5:47 a.m. In hospital and wifely duty limbo, Robin leans the back of her head against the wall and closed her eyes. She thought she'd rest for just a moment. The hours ticked away. It was dawn now. The trauma doc was still waiting for the information from the ER doc and from radiology, etc. There was no data because Ray would not agree to the tests and x-rays. Trauma doc is not going to come in there and stand around. Even a psychiatrist on call has 48 hours to answer an emergency call. So who could talk Ray into reason, even though a shrink may have been exactly what he needed right now? Robin opened her eyes and stirred as the smell of bleach hit her nostrils, as the janitor rolled a bright yellow mop bucket down the hallway. And the sound of the vending machine buzzed and clicked to life. That buzz added to the hum of the cacophony created by the harsh overhead fluorescent lights. Outside, Robin saw the first gray light of dawn bleed through the thin blinds, washing the ER in a tired silver hue that was still better than the greenish tinge of the fluorescence. Robin sat in the same seat, same posture, different heart. Ray's stubbornness not only halts his treatment, but has isolated him in Bay 4 in the back corner of the ER. Ray thinks he can rewrite the hospital protocols, but he can't. Tests first, then the trauma doc comes in. Time is passing, nothing is happening, and it's all his fault. Meanwhile, Robin, in her quiet seat in the waiting room, becomes the only person with the capacity to choose something different. Her hands no longer trembled. Her tears had dried somewhere around 4 a.m. She'd watched the staff shift change, seen nurses pass clipped updates to one another. Every once in a while she'd catch a sideways glance. Not cold, not cruel, just knowing. Like they understood this wasn't just about a fall through the floor. A nurse came by with a clipboard. "Still nothing," she said gently. "Radiology's standing down. He won't authorize scans, x-rays, nothing. Dr. Harris, trauma surgeon, said he's not coming in unless there's data. He's not going to stand over a patient who won't cooperate." Robin nodded slowly. "So, he's just lying there?" "Yeah," the nurse said. "Refusing everyone. He's got pain meds he won't take, monitoring, but nothing more." Robin didn't respond right away. She looked down at her lap, then at the window. Outside, the sun was starting to warm the edge of the sky. It hit her, gently but clearly. Ray was doing this to himself. Not just this. Everything. The broken floor. The empty bottles, the years of yelling, the way he twisted love into something cruel and controlling. He wasn't just sick. He wasn't just a changed man from the disciplined, respectful, and loving man she married years ago. No, he was choosing this. Disrespect, chaos, evil, over and over again, and now even his own body couldn't make him listen. A nurse approached again. "We can keep him here for observation, but if he won't consent to treatment or tests, there's a limit. The trauma doc's not going to force it. We're giving him a few more hours. Then he either signs consent or we start the discharge process." Robin blinked. "Discharge?" The nurse nodded. "Unless something critical changes, yeah, he could leave today, angry, injured, untreated, and come home?" she asked in almost fear. Robin looked back down the hall. That was her choice now, not just what to say to him, but what to do next. Because if Ray came home, nothing would be different. ER, Robin leaned her head back on the wall again. It was the quiet that did it. Not the alarms, not the rushing footsteps, not even the hushed urgency of the nurse when she called out for assistance. Robin had been staring out the window, the morning sun just beginning to touch the edges of the parking lot. She didn't even hear the first code blue. She only noticed when the lead ER doctor, Ram, earlier approached her slowly, with kindness in her eyes. She said, "Mrs. Kane?" Robin instinctively stood up as if she already knew, as if she had felt it already. They instructed her to sit back down and sat with her. "We're so sorry. There was an internal bleed, sudden, massive. We didn't catch it in time. He's gone." There was no cinematic crash of grief, no scream, no tears, at least not yet. Robin's eyes flicked to the floor, then to her hands. Still dusty, still hers. That simple gold band that she had worn all these years and had twisted in nervousness more often than not, but especially through the night, was still encrusted with the dirt from the fall, and maybe she saw a speck of Ray's blood just underneath it, soiling her finger. She never thought to ask herself why she hadn't washed her hands all night long. Instead, she whispered to the doctor, "Thank you," in the smallest of all her small voices. Robin's voice had diminished significantly over time. Ray had shrunk her usually confidence by degrees, from normal to petite, to minute year by year. Even her voice. The nurse who had accompanied the doctor lingered, unsure whether comfort was wanted. Robin gave a small shake of her head. Not now, not yet. Both doctor and the nurse walked away. Ray was gone, not yelling, not groaning, not threatening, not cussing, not breathing. And for the first time in years, Robin realized there would be no explanation, no apology, no redemption arc, no second chance to fix it, just silence. A strange, heavy silence that stretched across the morning like a new page enveloped her. It was almost comforting, as when a bad thunderstorm is over. She sat there for what seemed like a long time, letting the weight of it settle in. Then, slowly, calmly, she stood, picked up her purse, and walked out of the ER into the golden light of morning. She didn't look back. In the parking lot, Robin doesn't wander. Even in the trauma, she remembers exactly where she parked their old Subaru. She remembers because she walked to that car many times overnight in her mind and got in it and pulled away, leaving drunk and cussing Ray behind the curtain for the nurses and doctors to deal with. Yet, until the morning, she never left the building. Robin walks slowly toward her car. The sky is soft with early gold, the kind of light that promises a new day, even if you don't feel ready for it. Her steps are steady, her back is straight. She doesn't look back. Ray died sober, and that probably made him angrier than he'd ever been. The rowdy crowd, the party crowd, always think they want to go out with a bang and still in party mode. But Ray? He died sober. But in that sobriety, he did not have time to get his life together, get his house in order, or apologize to anyone, not even Robin, who was really just beyond the curtain. Even stripped of the alcohol, he never stripped away the cruelty. He died clear-eyed, but without redemption, without reflection, and without reaching for the one person who still showed up for him. He died sober. After all those years of drinking, of hiding behind the bottle, of blaming the war, the world, or me, in the end, there was no whiskey left to shield him. No fog to hide in, just pain and pride and all the damage he'd done. And I think that made him angrier than he'd ever been. He didn't ask for me, didn't apologize, didn't say anything at all. I was just beyond the curtain, and he died without ever reaching for me. Yet, that was the clearest he'd ever been, which really showed his heart. Robin goes home to the house with the hole in the floor. It was then that she realized that the hole in her own heart was also created by Ray, not by his absence, but by his presence, by his evil. The hole in Robin's heart. and for the first time she sees it clearly. Not caused by grief or loss, but by years of corrosion, control, and emotional wear and oppression. He made the hole, in the floor, in the house, and the hole in her. The front door of their old bungalow creaked open with the same sound it always had, that groaning resistance like the house itself didn't want to let go of its secrets. Robin stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She leaned her back against it. She was exhausted. He died sober, she repeated to herself, wondering if this is something that would haunt her now that he was gone. She decided that it would not. Yet the irony of it clung to Robin as she stood in the doorway of the house, looking down at the ruined floor. He'd spent years drowning himself in whiskey, muting whatever ghosts followed him home from the war, or maybe just feeding the ones that were always inside him. But in the end, in that ER room, under bright fluorescent lights, and surrounded by people he loathed for not fearing him, he was clean, sober, clear-eyed, and angrier than he had ever been. There was no time for redemption. No revelation, no apology whispered through oxygen tubes. Robin had been just beyond the curtain, waiting, hoping. But he never asked for her, not once, and maybe that, too, was a kind of answer. The house smelled of dust and wood rot and something vaguely metallic, like time had soaked into the walls. It was nothing like the hospital where people go to get healed. This house was obviously a place where people get sick, even though it was quiet, not peaceful quiet, raw quiet, like the sound after something breaks. She didn't take off her shoes, she just stood there staring at the gaping hole in the living room floor. The jagged edges of wood like teeth around an injury, like something had sprung up from the basement, snatched Ray, and pulled him down there. Yet the hole looked smaller than she remembered, less monstrous, just a hole. She walked slowly toward it, gently bouncing her 100 pounds to make sure where she stood was sound and solid. She stood just at the edge, peering down into the dim basement below. The bloodstains were gone, cleaned by the emergency crew, but the memory clung to the air like humidity. She rehearsed her realization again, that the hole in her heart hadn't been shaped by Ray's absence. It had been carved, piece by piece, by his presence, by his rage, by his words, by the years of flinching and apologizing and trying to keep the peace. He hadn't left a void. Ray was the void, like a black hole trying to suck in all the joy and peace of her life, to take it from her and still do nothing with it. She blinked, and for the first time in years, she felt more solid in her own skin than she had in years. She felt a little broken, but not hollow. The next day, she'd call someone to fix the floor. It would be expensive. It didn't matter. She'd call his drunk buddies and tell them he was gone. 2 days later, she would schedule his cremation and a little memorial service that she would not attend. She'd collect his life insurance and all military benefits, yet she did not want the folded-up flag. Maybe one of his buddies would want it. After the repairs, she'd list the house, sell it, and move. She'd go far from here, because this wasn't a home. It was an emotional jail cell. It was a monument to endurance, to pain. And Robin didn't need monuments anymore. She needed beginnings. She picked up a stray photo from the mantel, the two of them on their wedding day. Her smile in the photo was bright but stiff. She studied it for a moment, then dropped it face down on the table. Then she walked into the kitchen, took off that ring, finally washed her hands. She washed her hands like she was a surgeon, prepping for the operating room. After all, there was a woman there who needed healing. She needed all the pain and hurt and trauma to be excised from her so she could heal and live. After her hands were spotless, she made a cup of tea and sat at the table. No one yelling, no one watching, no one needing her to shrink. Just quiet, real quiet. The kind you could build something in. She looked at the clock, 9:30 a.m. She would remember this time, this day, forever. The end. You've just watched Until the Morning, the true story of Robin and Ray. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Very rich stories. See you next time.